stepping down from her position and been asked to name her classes permanently.
We do have class.
There we go. Baby and window. Welcome to the Garden of the Spirit, a class that studies apples from the orchard for the second time, beginning after Pesach 2014. This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe, Margaret Vogel of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Znevsky. Okay, we are on page 266 in Shmot. And in this, we've compared the slavery in Egypt and the Exodus to the birth of a child and the infusion of the Yetzer Tov into this child. We also compared it to the birth of Avraham, of Yitzchak, to the birth of Yaakov and Esav, the twins. As the child is infused with both the Yetzer Hara, the urge for evil, and the Yetzer Tov, the urge to do good.
By the way, it's going to be your site next week.
It's what?
Is it the 3rd of Shvat?
It's the 4th of Shvat. It's going to be 5 years. Just like that. Boom.
Wow.
Anyway.
5 years. I may have your speech, Rudy. I may have recorded it or most of it. I don't remember.
It's the 4th of Shvat, right?
Yep, the 4th of Shvat.
That's next Thursday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thursday. I knew that.
Rudy made an amazing speech then.
I couldn't hear it.
You could hear it?
I was in Florida.
I remember standing in the snow and mud.
Because your yard site is 3 days after mine.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's is Rosh Chodesh.
Okay. So, and we went through the verses, the psukim in the account of birth of Yaakov and Esav, and how it actually alludes to the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara.
We're actually one line below where you put the date.
We did this
did-
already?
We
Yaakov
did
replied?
43. We're on 44.
Okay. Let's start from here anyway. Esav begs him, please gorge me with that red stuff, the red bean stew, and that is he says, I'm starving for the things that bring satisfaction to the Yetzer Hara. You've squeezed me out. And so Yaakov replies, sell me your birthright, which means on the day a boy turns 13, the Yetzer Tov takes charge and grabs the reins from the Yetzer Hara. He grabs the birthright. Alan, to start with this, Yaakov replied,
Yaakov replied, sell me your birthright, for on the first day the good inclination enters the individual's body. When he is 13 years and 1 day old, it takes charge by force, and the evil inclination is subdued before it.
Okay, now we have the first Mishnah of Pesachim. The Gemara Pesachim speaks about Pesach, holiday of Pesach. And the whole Masechta of Gemara begins, Or la'arba asar bodkin asachamas la'aner, the light of the 14th. The night of the 14th, we check for chametz by the light of a candle. The actual wording reads, or reading words, the light of the 14th. Let me. Okay, light is a euphemism for night. We even find places in the Torah where the Torah avoids writing the negative and puts in, it says it in a different way to avoid writing negative. So the Mishnah 2 says the light of the 14th, which is a euphemism for night, meaning the night of the 14th, we search for chametz. The Arizal understands the Mishnah to mean that the beginning of a boy's 14th year or when he turns 13. Go ahead, Alan, the next part. Therefore,
on the eve of the 14th, we search for chametz by the light of a candle. This quote from the Mishnah refers to the search for chametz conducted on the eve of the 14th of Nisan. Here it is interpreted allegorically to refer to the day before a boy's 14th year begins. That is the day before his 13th birthday, when he becomes bar mitzvah. Keep going?
no,
Oh, okay.
I don't know why it's the day before his 14th year.
This is a little awkward, this sentence.
Yes, please explain why.
It's refer to the day before the boy's 14th birthday begins. Okay, so that's just before his 14th birthday. And then it talks about the day before his 13th birthday when he becomes bar mitzvah. This seems inconsistent.
It seems very inconsistent.
Or
And-
it's just written wrong, where it says the day before his 13th birthday when he becomes bar mitzvah.
Yeah, but I agree with that, but the boy's 14th, the day before the 14th birthday makes no sense.
I think you guys are right.
14th year.
Yeah, well, 14th year, 14th year is also, it doesn't really matter because the 14th year starts on his 14th birthday.
It's 13th.
13.
I think,
It's
I
13th
think you guys are
birthday.
right. It's very possibly a mistake.
No, the
Um,
14th
let me
year
explain.
the 14th year starts on his 13th birthday.
Let me explain how it,
I don't know.
let me explain, because there is some confusion, and I'll say specifically what the confusion is. It says, very often we'll see the term, you have to be 13 in a day to become bar mitzvah.
Mhm.
Let's say someone is born today, the 24th of Tavis.
Mhm.
So even no matter what time of day you're born, even if you're born in the afternoon, today is day number 1. After dusk or after sundown, sunset or sundown or dusk, now it's his second day. And we
Day
say he's
2.
2 days old. So he may have been born this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Mhm.
Right now, it's not even 8 o'clock. So at 6 hours old, he's already considered 2 days old. The 24th of Davis and the 25th of Davis, even though it's not a complete, even though the day's not finished. So he's 6 hours old, but he's also 2 days old. Count the days. Okay, in English, 365.
Mhm.
What was today? The 28th. So let's say, go by the English, say 28th. So on next year, on December 27th,
Mhm.
2022, he's 365 days old. Technically, he's a year old because he's lived 365 days.
And then he starts his second year.
Second year, yeah. That's why the healing, we do the following year of your birthday.
And he starts his second year, which is why before the bar mitzvah, right after that, he starts his 14th year.
No.
So, yeah, but a lot of times you'll see it might say he has to be 13 in a day to be bar mitzvah. So what it means is that 365 days by the English calendar, or in the Hebrew calendar, next year, the 23rd of Tavis, he completes a year. But we say you haven't finished the year. You have to do the extra day. In other words, you have to hit your birthday. Now, in the English calendar, now you're 366 days old because we count December 28th first, the year that you were born, and then the following year. So technically, your 366 days by the English calendar. In the Hebrew calendar, it would be 300 on a regular year, on a typical year, 355 days, because 354 days, which is 1 year, would only take you to the day before your birthday. So it means you have to hit your birthday then, and then, as you said, you're starting your next year. You're
Right.
starting the 14th year.
Are
So
you in-
that's why it's 13 complete years. And the beginning, and now you're in your 14th year. It's 13 and 1 day of the 14th year, 13 days of the 14th year. So this is probably, I'm gonna have to look at this a little more carefully to see how it is. But that's the one with you might. There was once a rabbi in town who made the boy wait an extra day for a bar mitzvah because it said 13 years in a day. So he made him wait 1 day past his birthday, which isn't correct. It means the day of the birthday is the 1 day. I don't remember who the boy was. I do remember who the rabbi was. And no, I'm not saying.
And how old are you in spiritual terms?
Like about.
That's a different question.
Wait, you want to go somewhere with this, Rudy?
No, it's just that if in spiritual terms, it really, if it's the day before your 14th birthday or the day before your 140th birthday, it makes no difference, right?
Yeah.
Because the soul is immortal. So in spiritual terms, it really can't even apply.
We count our birthday. The Torah tells us to count our birthday.
Yeah,
Physical terms. because
we're in a physical world.
Yeah.
My only point in saying that is I'm not getting hung up on what the text says, because I think it's really, in the long scheme, it's irrelevant.
Well, if the person's hasn't had their 13th birthday, they can't be counted for the minyan.
No, I get all that. I get all that. I understand
Right.
that.
I'm just saying why it is important.
But it's important now because you're talking about when the Yetzer Hara is overcome by the Yetzer Tov. That's why it's important.
Yeah, but that's only in the physical world.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Here, I got the pictures from Rudy's mother's funeral. I don't see a video from his speech. I don't know if I took it or not.
You did it. You showed it to me at one point.
I did, but I got some nice pictures with the snow and all, everything. Okay.
Thank you.
Wow. When a boy turns 13 and enters, enters his 14th year, the Yetzer Tov fully enters the body. This is in the merit of the Torah, which is called light, and in the merit of mitzvot, which are called a candle, that he has learned and performed in preparation for adulthood, as the verse states in Mishlei, for the kiner mitzvah, the Torah are. For the mitzvah is a candle, and Torah is light. So when the Mishnah says in Pesach, the night of the 14th, we check for chametz by the light of the 14th. We check for chametz by the light of a candle. We're talking about the light of Torah and the candle of mitzvah, and we'll continue with the explanation. Go ahead. Wait, hold on.
But is the light of the 14th? It's technically the 15th, no?
A year or
No, the night.
no? So the 15th is Pesach.
Yeah.
So Pesach, the first day of Pesach is Shabbos. That's 15. Then we search the night of the 14th, which is Thursday night.
Yeah, but third night starts the day, the following
Correct.
day.
Correct. So the Thursday is the 13th of Nisan, Friday is the 14th of Nisan, and Shabbos is the 15th of Nisan. So we check for chametz. 13th is Thursday. We check for chametz, the light of the 14th, which is Thursday night, and we have the Seder, the light of the 15th, which is Friday night. At the beginning of the 14th. And today it's very common. If you write an invitation in Hebrew and you want people to come, it's in the event, is at night, you would write or le whatever. The light of today was the 24th. Right now we're having this. If someone has an event tonight, you would call it the light of the 25th or lechavhei tevis.
It's the next
This is
day.
huh?
It's the next day.
Yes, but it's accepted to write that way. The light of.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead for on, Alan.
For on the first day of the boy's 14th year, his good inclination enters his body fully in the merit of the Torah he learned in his youth, which is called light, as in the verse, and the Torah is light. And in the merit of the commandments he was trained to perform as part of his education, which are called a candle, as in the same verse, for the commandment is a candle. The divine soul and the good inclination enters the individual's consciousness gradually, as the parents educate their child in its youth to accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. That is to fulfill Hashem's commandments, study his Torah, and adopt the Torah's values. Ideally, by the time a child has reached the age of maturity, he or she has been fully inculcated into the Torah's lifestyle and is ready to accept his or her obligations. The divine soul and good inclination can then fully manifest themselves in his or her active consciousness.
Okay. Thank you. Now, so now with the candle, the mitzvah and light of Torah, we search for chametz, which is the Yetzer Hara, expel it and subdue it. Hey, Tim, continue, please.
Okay, good.
Yeah, in the merit.
Yeah.
In the merit of both of these, we search for chametz, which is the evil inclination. We expel it and subdue it, and his divine soul and good inclination enter his body fully.
All right. So I look back, and it is not a mistake what he wrote. He's saying that on the day of the 13th birthday, when the boy turns 13, that's when the Yetzer Tov and fully enters the body. Therefore, the day before, on the eve of the 14th, or on the what's the word? On the cusp of his becoming bar mitzvah, the day before his 13th birthday, that's the time to search for chametz. To search for chametz by the light of a candle, so that you can, I guess, as a way to prepare, or to be prepared for the Yetzer Tov to fully enter. Now, what I sent around, with the link, has to do with King David. King David's birth was a very strange. Share screen, please. Here we go. Can you all see? Nitzevet, mother of David?
Yeah.
Okay, the jewishwoman.org. Look at that. Who knew? Okay, in chapter 69 of Tehillim, save me, O God, the waters threaten to engulf me. I am wearied by my calling out, my throat is dry. I've lost open waiting. More numerous than the hairs on my head are those who hate me without reason. Must I then repay what I have not stolen? Mighty are those who would cut me down, or my enemies without cause. O God, you know my folly, my unintended wrongs are not hidden from you. It is for your sake I have borne disgrace, humiliation covers my face. I have become a stranger to my brothers, and alien to my mother's sons. Out of envy of your house, they ravaged me. The disgrace of those who revile you have fallen upon me. Those who sit by the gate talk about me. I am the taunt of drunkards. Disgrace breaks my heart. I am left deathly sick. They put gall into my meal and give me vinegar to quench my thirst. I didn't know gall is there. Okay, gall is a bitter thing. You guys probably know about it. Right? Maybe related to wormwood. And to, what's the other word? Amethyst or something? I don't know. Okay. So this is the voice of David. What's the word we say? Victim. How many ways is he a victim? But this is written by King David. When his lineage had a great pall hanging over it. His great grandmother Ruth was a convert from Moab. Torah says a convert from Moab they could convert, but they can't marry into the general population of Israel. They have to marry another convert or something like that. The question was whether this law applies to all converts from Moab or only to the male converts. If it applies only to the males, then Ruth was allowed to marry into the general population of Israel. She was allowed to marry Boaz. So this was a great dilemma, a great issue that either hadn't been established or wasn't well known. And you come across many, many different aspects, a lot of discussion on it and how it affected Ruth, her husband Boaz, their children and grandchildren, up to King David. In fact, one of the reasons given that Shmuel Hanavi wrote the book of Ruth is to write of the lineage of David and to testify that Ruth is 100% convert and the marriage with Boaz was 100% legitimate. I may have mentioned before, but before Ruth entered Israel, things were ruthless. So, in fact, there was when she came back to Israel, her husband's I don't remember, was an uncle or a cousin was Boaz, and he married her. There was a closer relative who had first right of refusal, or the first option, and he was a closer relative, and he was worried that the marriage would be questioned. And even though the halacha was at the time that a female convert is permitted from Moab, he may have been worried, A, that it wasn't well known, it wasn't established, and B, that it would be overturned. Boaz was much more prominent, was a leader, and they figured that it would have a better chance of being accepted. So, and that's why Boaz was the one who ended up marrying her. So they were married, and the night of the wedding, Boaz died. Didn't make it through the night. However, Ruth conceived, and from that, her son Oved was born. I forgot where we learned about Oved, but he was called Oved. I just saw this last couple of weeks. He was called Oved because he was a true servant of Hashem. Oved was the father of Yishai, Jesse. Who is Yishai?
David's father.
David's father.
Yes. And Rudy, I'm gonna say you got everyone in your family. You have Ruth, you have Yishai, you almost have Oved.
Hmm.
So Oved, Yishai is one of the 4 people that the Mishnah says died on no account of sin of their own or fault, but only because of the event in the Garden of Eden, the Ito Shel Nachash, because of the incident with the serpent. Who were the 4? One was Yishai, one was Binyamin, younger brother of Yosef, one was a son of David, grandson of Yishai, and the 4th, I should know this offhand, but it slips my mind at the moment. So only 4 people in the world that are mentioned in the Mishnah. Yishai is one of them. So Yishai had, and that's what this talks about. This is outstanding. Family. Doesn't say who the 4th one is here. It talks about David's mother, who is also involved in this. So Yishai himself began to have doubts. He got married. He had 7 sons, and then he himself had doubts if he was permitted to be married to the general congregation of Israel. And so he separated from the short story is he separated from his wife, and they lived, they stayed separate. After a while, he wanted to have another child, but he didn't know if he could marry to the general population. So he had a maidservant, and he had this idea that he would marry the maidservant, and it would be conditionally. If he himself was not permitted to marry the general congregation, being a descendant of Moab, then he grants her freedom, and she's herself a convert, and he's allowed to marry her. If not, then he says, if he is legitimate, then she remains a maidservant, and then he's also allowed to marry her. And so he arranged to marry his maidservant, and his maidservant a maidservant is she had a mind of her own, and she knew of Yishai's wife and her anguish, and she said, "Let's trade places, just like our grandmothers, Rachel and Leah." And so they changed places. Yishai was not aware of it, and as I mentioned, he was a very holy dude. And sure enough, the real wife became pregnant. And so there's all this doubt how she became pregnant, where she became pregnant from, and from that David was born. So David was shunned by his brothers, by the family, as someone who may have been illegitimate, whose lineage was not known. And there's a long here they go into great detail, but apparently anything that went wrong was David's fault, not only in the house, but also in town. Anything that went wrong, it was David's fault. He even had they even accused him of, I guess, of controlling the weather, sending a hurricane or tornado. Okay, you guys are aware of that conspiracy. So, but it says anything went wrong, something was missing, David must have stolen it. And he wasn't allowed to join the family. Shmuel comes. Hashem says, I regret I'm really upset and disappointed what happened with Shaul. Didn't work out. I'm sending you to anoint someone else. Now there is a king. So this is like a little bit, what's the word? This is treason. But Hashem sent Shmuel in quietly. He goes to Beis Lachem. and he says, "Let me see your sons." He brings the oldest son, and he looks and says, "Ah, this guy has leadership qualities. He's tall, he's handsome, like see, he looks like a natural leader." And Hashem says, "That's not the one." Shmuel, man sees to the I think to the eyes or to the face, but Hashem sees to the heart, and he's not it. Don't look at his appearance or his great height. Hashem does not see with eyes. Man, like man does, Hashem sees the heart. Then he called the second one. Hashem says, not him either. And at this time already, Shmuel knew from the first time not to make any assumptions, and so on. 7 sons, and Hashem says, no, no, no. So Shmuel says to Yishai, "Are there any other children? Not do you have any more sons?" He says, "Are there any other young men here?" And he says, "Well, there's somebody they call David." And Shmuel wasn't making any assumptions. There's a small one. He's just taking care of the sheep. It says they sent him to go with the sheep to dangerous places where there are wild animals. And when David came to the Navi, his mother came with him. She had been an outcast with her son. And he is described in the Navi as being of ruddy complexion. That means red complexion, red hair, beautiful eyes, handsome to look at. He was a poet. He wasn't the type of guy that you think of who you need to lead against the Pelishtim, the Philistines. And he was a poet. He was like, not mainstream, beats to a different drum. And Hashem said, "My anointed one is standing before you," to Shmuel. "Why do you remain seated? Arise and anoint David without delay." And this was watched by all the family, by all his brothers. David is 28 years old at the time, and his mother, who suffered with him for 28 years, finally was exonerated. And here it says, we have, like we say in Hallel, Even Masu Habanim Haisalerosh Pina. The mother says, the stone that was reviled by the builders has now become the cornerstone. And the brothers responded, Me'ez Hashem Haisazos Niflas Beinenu, just like we say in the Hallel. This has come from Hashem, it was hidden from our eyes. I think I wrote a letter to Rudy's neighbor. Was it the mayor who just died?
Oh,
Mayor
Ryan.
Ryan. I wrote a letter to Ryan after the Court Square menorah years ago when he was the mayor, and they had redone Court Square. So I used the sentence then: the stone that was reviled by the builders has now become the cornerstone. Court Square had been in neglect before. So so David's whole background comes with great is clouded in a nebulous, I have a line there, I forgot, in fog, in mystery, what his origin is. And now it was and now they were shown to be of full-fledged members of the Jewish people. So the whole thing there is a very strange story. Again, as we find many times in this line, it's connected with the crooked path that we take to get to Mashiach, to evade Klippa and our friend Sammy, who are trying to prevent the coming of Mashiach. So this is the angel Sammy. So it's a very crooked path, and it's done in places where the Satan and the angel Sammy would not think to look. So this is the background over here. So, but one of the things that we have from this is the outstanding uprightness of David's father Yishai. Over here, we're going to find something that's written a little negative, and I'll do my little explanation, my little spin.
Out of curiosity, do we have an attributed date like May, June, whatever for David?
What?
Do we have a date of the year
Of what?
of birth of David's birth?
Yes. Yes, on Shavuos.
Uh-huh.
He was born and died on Shavuos.
So it's the
He died
6th
on his
of
70th birthday. He was 70 years old and 3 hours when he died. And I think it was Shabbos afternoon. So if it was, and if I'm not mistaken, there was only one day Shavuos in those days. Although Shavuos is also always the 50th day after the second day of Pesach.
so it's like the 6th of
It would be the 6th. However, if there were 2 days Rosh Chodesh for Iyar and for Sivan, it would have been the 5th. If there was only 1 day Rosh Chodesh for Iyar and for Sivan, it would be the 7th. So exactly which of those days is most likely it's like ours, the 6th.
my thought was the description being a poet and a warrior, correct? It told me, oh, it could be a Gemini because it's I had a boss who was very divine and very, very evil. So yeah, and he was a Gemini.
Divine and evil.
Yeah. Sometimes
And
at the same time.
Gemini is Sivan.
Correct. Yeah.
It's the third one.
Something like that. I was reading about an Argentinian. I think I couldn't find the proof that he was Jewish. We hadn't thought that he was Jewish, an astrologer, although he did a little more of something he said he invented, which is like data mining in 1962. So he predicted a couple of things in the world, but so that it brought to me, the description that is warrior and poet remind me of these guys that was an entertainer and had the signs and whatnot. But he said basically it's all nonsense and there's more to
What's
his
nonsense?
Astrology. In this, yes, so he was able to predict Lady Di death and JFK assassination. And wild guesses.
What was the first one?
Lady Di, how you call it? Diana, yeah. Many years, so many years before JFK, because he came to fame in '62, so he had a few months to guess it. Anyhow, he just brought those ideas to me.
JFK was November 63.
63, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's the background. Any comments? Any other?
Well, we're
feedback,
going to know
comments,
why we're talking about David's birth. I think we're going to get to that. Here we
Okay,
go.
there are 2 words. Where are we?
Now,
There are 2 words in Hebrew for chametz. The first is sa'or, leaven, and basically they're interchangeable. One, I think, gets translated as ferment, for something fermented. The other one is a fermenting agent. So one could be leaven, one could be yeast. I don't know. Both represent, and I think Rashi says that they're interchangeable, but both represent the bad traits or klipa within us. Sa'or comes from and it says here that Sa'or comes from the father, doesn't say why. King David writes in Tehillim, behold, I was conceived in sin. And this is a different chapter 51. The Medrash says that Yishai, the father of David, engaged in relations when David was conceived for his own pleasure rather than as a way to serve Hashem. Okay, so I'm saying this must be taken with a grain of salt. Yishai was one of only 4 people who, according to the Mishnah, died only because of the serpent in Gan Eden. That means that these people had no fault of their own. And my guess is the statement is meant in some subtle form or alludes to some certain thing. Don't know what.
It alludes to the sin of Adam, which is where David originated from, right? He gave 70 years of his life so that David could be born.
Over here it says that David's father, it says very clearly, David's father had engaged in relations for his own pleasure.
Yeah, so David's father was Adam as well.
Okay, whatever. There's whatever. I can't argue. Okay, Jim. So go ahead now.
Now, every person possesses spiritual leaven, Seor, which comes from the seminal drop of his father. This is alluded to by the verse, "Behold, I was conceived in sin," in which King David meant to say, "My father Jesse had only his own pleasure in mind when he conceived me." Leaven, the agent that causes dough to rise, is a metaphor for the evil inclination, the source of ego and haughtiness in a person. Although Judaism does not believe in original sin, we are taught that the intentions of the parent have, when conceiving a child, determine the nature of the child's spiritual garment through which he or she experiences life. The more selfish the person's intentions, the more spiritual work the child must do in order to spiritually refine his or her perceptions. Since King David aspired to the highest levels of divine consciousness, he regarded even the slight amount of selfish orientation his righteous father presumably entertained while conceiving him as an obstacle to his spiritual development that he had to overcome.
All right. The second term for chametz is chametz. This klipa comes from the mother. And again, it doesn't explain why that is, how that works. Keep in mind, the seeds from the father and mother were at first pure. After the sin in the Garden of Eden, the snake injected putridity into mankind and into their seed. The term that's used is zuhama. Zuhama, I may have had a word for it once. We've had it a few times. It means like like sweat. And putridity could be an original word. I didn't find it in the dictionary, but it means like dirt or sweat or a byproduct.
Grime.
Spell it.
Grime. Grime. Grime.
Grime.
Right.
Who said that? Rudy?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be a good word. Grime. So the snake injected grime into mankind. And so I just saw a few weeks ago, I've mentioned this before, that the seeds have an odor to them. It's because of the grime that the snake injected. And then when we left Egypt, we were supposed to, we got the Torah, we were purified of that, and then we worshiped the golden calf, and we lost that.
Got it back.
We got the grime back. We were rearrested.
Oy.
Okay, but can you imagine, like in the Garden of Eden before, like I guess there was no such thing as a bad smell. Okay.
Well, yeah. I don't know how lost it got, but that's a different issue.
How what?
How lost it got.
Yeah.
Got pretty lost.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jim, go ahead. Chametz in contrast.
Chametz, in contrast, comes from the mother's seed and is therefore called machmetzet, fermenting agent in the feminine. The Torah commands us to remove all leaven and fermenting agent from our possession before Pesach. Rashi understands these two terms to be synonymous. Leaven is also referred to as fermenting agent in order to indicate, even though it is inedible, it is still prohibited to possess it, just as it is prohibited to possess chametz.
Okay, so now we have a rule in the Talmud that a boy becomes liable he takes responsibility, becomes liable for punishment, and so on when he turns 13, girl when she turns 12. However, this is only for the court on earth that makes decisions. In heaven, you're not liable till you turn 20. And this 20 is symbolized by the 7 days of Pesach, 7 days for eating matzah, because 13 and 7
20.
makes 20. Okay?
Mhm.
Christian, go ahead. All this is expelled.
All this is expelled, and we eat matzah, which signifies the good inclination. We eat matzah in order to expel the chametz for 7 days, corresponding to the 7 years that are left before the person turns 20. At that age, he is judged by the heavenly court. For certain sins, a person can be tried and punished by an earthly, that means rabbinic court, for such 2 pages. For such sins, a person becomes liable for punishment at age of maturity, 12 for a girl and 13 for a boy. For other sins, a person cannot be tried and punished by an earthly court, but only by the heavenly court. For such sins, he or she becomes liable for punishment only at the age of 20.
All right. And that is 43. Bamidbar Rabbah 18:4.
Mhm.
All right. So, okay, go ahead for during the 7 years.
For during the 7 years, a person must be extremely on guard against his evil inclination, inasmuch as he had become used to being ruled by it until he became 13 years and 1 day old. He is therefore during these 7 years like a sick person who is being healed of his infirmity, who, during the first few days, has to eat only light foods that will not harm him. We are therefore commanded to eat only matzah for 7 days of Passover.
Okay, so during Passover, we left Egypt. We left Egypt. On what merit did we leave? Hashem had a covenant with Abraham that his children will end up as slaves in Egypt and that they're going to leave. So that means it didn't depend on where we stood, just that when the time came, we would leave. Why? Because of Abraham, but not on our own merit. It's like you go into business and they don't know you, but they say, you know what? We did business with your father, everything worked. Here, take this on credit. If you mess up, you ruined it. So Hashem took us out because of Abraham and what's going to be, but he said you got to do something. So smear the blood, take the lamb, smear the blood on the. Okay, but really, we hadn't earned this exodus at all, and it was only as a favor from Hashem. So we were considered very immature as a people. So therefore, we had to shun any klipa, shun any evil. The Torah says, we're going to read it in a couple weeks, Paro saw that the people fled. We ran away. We couldn't tolerate any evil, and we had to run away from it. When the 7 days are over, we're not so fresh behind the ears, a little more mature. We have some experience now. Now, the evil isn't so, the klipa isn't so challenging to us, or isn't, and therefore we're able to tolerate. So we don't eat matzah, we only eat matzah, no chametz for the 7 days. But after that, it's not such a problem. It's, for example, like someone, it's like someone who's breaking a bad habit, maybe smoking or whatever else it is. If anyone smokes, I apologize. I don't mean to offend you, but or any other habit. I shouldn't say bad habit. Any habit, and someone wants to stop smoking. So it could be that in the beginning, they can't be around any cigarette smoke. Maybe after a few months, then it's okay. It's not so dangerous to their progress to be around the smoke. They can smell it. Other people can smoke, and it's not going to be a problem for them. or that they're gonna start smoking again. So and so with other things. So the same idea is with the chametz. We don't eat chametz for the 7 days because we're immature, we're not experienced. After that, we can tolerate. We were able to tolerate it without having it drag us down. Okay, go ahead, Gershon. This is what.
This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai responded to his son, Rabbi Eliezer, who asked him, if chametz embodies the evil inclination and matzah the good inclination, why are we not prohibited from eating chametz the whole year? He replied that in the days of Passover, we were like sick people who came out of Egypt and therefore had to eat only matzah. Afterwards, when we were healed and healthy, eating chametz would not harm us. So too the young man must be very watchful against the evil inclination until he reaches the age of 20. The end.
No, not the end.
The end of the paragraph.
Look at the footnote. It continues.
Addenda. Yes, next
chapter-
week.
This chapter 2 continues at the end, in the back of the book.
It continues.
Let me see if I have
Right.
the right page.
Yeah, it's from
17.
12:17. Yeah, it continues.
It's the
More
bottom.
to continued. Good.
12:17 to 12:30.
Yep.
It's ready.
So
Ready for next week.
what happened
Yeah.
behind?
I'm thinking, I'm counting. I'm seeing what kind of pace we're doing.
Okay.
If we're up to 268, does that mean like on this side we're doing about 150 a year? That's 300. That's 900 to 6 years. And in the back, I don't know. It's hard to tell. How much have we done in the back? 12:15, and we started at 11 and change.
You started at 11:22.
11:22, and we're up to 12:17.
Mhm.
So we're about
95 pages.
100 pages, roughly
95 pages.
95 pages in less than 2 years.
Mhm.
95 and 268. Okay, so we've done about 365 pages, 366 in the 2 years.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, any comments? Let me take off. We'll see you all